we are going in kind of spicy material today. The topic of death and impermanence. It can be a little distressing to some people. So now is your last chance to change your mind. If you're not comfortable engaging those topics, that's fine. Don't feel any pressure to be here. You can leave, and yeah, that's all good. Try it another time. I don't really need to introduce Equanimity. Everybody knows him from the Tuesday meditations, where he is one of the instructors. Yeah, the floor is yours, Equanimity.
Thank you, Tara. Yeah, and thank you everyone for coming today. So I joined VRM almost a year ago. Like I said, I'm very passionate about Theravada Buddhism, philosophy, all things spiritual and scientific. I'm very into meditation from the Theravada tradition and from the Mind Illuminated. And yeah, I wanted to volunteer to teach on Tuesdays to give back to the community from what I've learned in the past. Yeah, so Taro covered the basics and the technicalities. We're going to be doing a guided meditation, obviously. So if you want to start thinking about how to get comfortable in your chair now and the particulars around that, I'm probably going to talk about the context behind this meditation for like 10-ish minutes, but then we're going to jump into the meditation. So yeah, so let's get started.
And I should also say, I mentioned YouTube. I'll say it one more time. The recording stops at the end of the guided meditation. So none of the private things we're sharing and discussing here will be uploaded. So be comfortable. It's just the presentation and the guided meditation that we're uploading. So feel free to speak and be yourself and all that. It won't be recorded. Okay, that's all for me. Thanks, Equanimity.
All right, so let's get started. So one thing to keep in mind, we're going to be entering the world of Theravada Buddhism. So all the concepts and the meditation itself uses Theravada Buddhism as a framework. So I'm going to be talking about certain things like one of the big Buddhist concepts is the concept of no self. Buddhists don't believe in a soul or a spirit, and I know that's kind of different from Western esotericism and Western religion in general. But for today, we just got to jump into Theravada Buddhism and kind of try to accept it for the meditation today and not try to like debate against it. So I just wanted to say that first. And so where the mindfulness of death meditation comes from, well, in Buddhism, in Theravada Buddhism, there's these books called the Five Nikayas. It's part of the Pali Canon, and in Buddhism, it's not so much like how the Bible is related to Christianity or the Quran's related to Islam. The Buddhist holy books, they wouldn't even call them holy books. There's just this group of texts, you can say, that were written down after like 100 or so years after the Buddha died, and they were put together by well, there were 3 councils in total, but essentially they tried to keep true to the word of the Buddha and the Buddha's close followers after it was orally transmitted. So the first Nikaya, the Anguttara Nikaya, it's one of the 5 Nikayas. This is the one that has the 2 suttas that deal with the mindfulness of death. They're called Maranasati suttas. I put links to both of them if you want to check them out. They're not long at all. But those are the foundations for these meditations. And then if we fast forward hundreds of years, we get to the Visuddhimagga, which is it's a treatise of Buddhist practice and Theravada Abhidhamma, which is just a fancy word for basically philosophy, ethics, and theory. It was written in the 5th century in Sri Lanka. The book's divided into 3 major sections, which is basically the 3 major sections of Theravada Buddhism in general: ethics, concentration, or meditation, and insight. And so in the section with concentration, there's a subchapter called the Mindfulness of Death chapter. That's in the middle of the 40 other different subjects that one can use for meditation. So this chapter is where I basically put the meditation today that we're going to do together from. And yeah, so in the Visuddhimagga, the way the mindfulness of death is described It's written as just one meditation, but logically it can be divided into 3 sub-meditations, and so that's how I've made it my own, and that's what I wanted to share with everyone today. So the 3 meditations we're going to be doing today are in the Visuddhimagga, but it's just presented as like one general meditation. And so I've been working with the Mindfulness of Death meditation for months now. I've actually presented this and done one guided meditation before, back in October. And I actually did it today. So yeah, I really enjoy this meditation. There's so much insight to be gained from it, and so I'm happy to share it with everyone. All right, go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to be dealing with concepts of death and rebirth. Like I said, this is all from a Theravada context. In Pali, the word for death is marana. And one of the most important things before I even go any further is that in Theravada Buddhism, they don't look at the world and consciousness and the universe from a third person standpoint. You know, like in the West, we have a scientific approach like I'm here and we're examining the world out there. That's not how Theravada Buddhism works. They start with first person experience. Like that's how they analyze the world, consciousness, the universe from first person experience. Called the moments of experience model. So they believe that like you can even think of it like every millisecond is like one moment of experience, and we have like almost an infinite amount of these throughout our lives. And so the concept of death in this context, it's not the end of each moment of conscious experience. It's the end of one lifetime, like you know how we're used to in the West, like the death of a person or an animal or something. So that's the context we're going to be working with. Yeah, so they also believe in rebirth. The way it works is, so we have all these moments of experience throughout our lives. Once we die, the next moment of experience, you literally go into the next life. And I'm saying you just as a word to describe like what goes to the next life, but it's not that there is no you. It's just your next experience. I don't really want to get into the topic of no self because that's very complicated, but the most important point right now is you die, your next moment of experience is your next life. Like there's nothing in between. And the last thing on the slide, so the Theravada Buddhist view versus the Western view of death. In the West, death is taboo. It's almost as if like if you talk about death or if you think about death, you're almost like jinxing the person or whoever you're thinking about death for. In the West, you know, we live in capitalism, and we're distracted. We're very distracted from the topic of death. That's just something that's pushed into the background. Like, oh, we're encouraged to just go on our phones, like use Facebook, play video games, into the more maybe like vulgar things, like just enjoying sex, relationships, jobs. So death is always just thrown into the background into the West, or in the West. But in Theravada Buddhism, it's completely different. The Buddha encourages one to think about death all the time. In fact, the ideal person will think about it like every second. And that's what the first Maranasati sutta describes, is that the Buddha said, like, thinking about death, like, every in and out breath is ideal. Anything longer than that is too long. I know that's extreme, but this is just to give some context of how Buddhists view death in general. And there's even a few different meditations besides this one where the object of concentration are corpses. So that's a really integral part of a Buddhist life. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a good segue into the outcomes. Like, why are we going to do this meditation? What's so useful about it? I'm going to read directly what's in the bullet points because it's straight from the Visuddhimagga and it's pretty succinct. So the first thing is if you do this meditation often, You're constantly diligent. You have a perception of disenchantment with all kinds of existence, which means you're just not attached. Like, you're not attached to going on your phone. You're not attached to relationships or like your job or money. Not to say that any of that's bad inherently, but the attachment to it is what's bad. Then the next thing, no more attachment to life. One condemns evil, avoids much storing. So if you're attached to money per se, or you're attached to like physical things like collectibles, it helps like to avoid like why, like, you start thinking like, why am I attached to these things, etc. Increased perception of the three marks of existence. Three marks of existence is a big part of Theravada Buddhism. It's actually one of the fundamental insights that one tries to generate. And that's impermanence of everything, all conditioned phenomena, unsatisfactoriness of the same, and no self. One dies non-deluded and fearless, because when you contemplate the mindfulness of death, often you develop a sort of a different perspective of death, and you develop a relationship with death and change. So those, on the other hand, those who don't develop mindfulness of death fall victim to fear, horror, and confusion at the time of death. Bullet point number 3, mindfulness of death can allow one to get into access, concentration, but not absorption. If anyone's ever heard of the jhanas, I think it's pretty cool that in the Visuddhimagga, for each of the 40 objects of meditation, the author lists which meditations can get you, or are supposed to be used to get into jhanas, which are really deep, focused, pleasant states of concentration. Access concentration is similar to a jhana, but it's like one step before the jhana. So this meditation in particular, you can get into access concentration, and you could just think of access concentration again like a really focused, pleasant state. But you don't get absorbed into your object. That's a jhana. And I've actually gotten into access using this meditation, and I have a meditation teacher. His name's Santu. He's part of the Mystery School. I always crack up with him when I meet with him weekly, and I get into access concentration with these seemingly kind of random topics, like mindfulness of death. Like, it's not one object; it's an abstract, complex object, and I always crack up that it's possible to get into deep states of concentration with something that's not really concrete, like the breath, for example. And then the last bullet point, using mindfulness of death for insight. Yeah, so our consciousness relies on the conditions of the body. The body's impermanent. Foundation for a self is impermanent. How can the self be permanent? So this is just like another aspect of this meditation. Like, if these thoughts come up, or if these thoughts are generated, these can lead to lasting insights. Okay, next slide. Okay, so that was basically the context behind the meditation we're going to be doing today. Now we'll move on to the instructions. Like I said before, the meditation is divided into 3 subparts, and this was by me. In the Visuddhimagga, it's just one meditation. But I feel dividing it into 3 subparts, like through my own experience, and for especially doing a guided meditation, I feel like it makes more sense to do it this way. So for this meditation, it's not like mindfulness of the breath, for example, like where you're just bringing your attention to the breath. Of course, you're going to stay aware of everything else, but your goal is to just come back to the breath each time. This meditation is different in the sense that it's more creative imagination. It's more contemplation. So, like, for example, I'm going to be giving prompts during the guided meditation, like sentences. And then for a few minutes afterwards, you're going to kind of let your mind go to places on its own. But there's a delicate balance, right? You don't want to let it go too far on its own, where you're just completely lost in thought and distracted. And you also don't want to control your mind so much that you don't let it contemplate these topics. So yeah, this meditation is like a dance between too much control and too little, like letting it go too wild. So yeah, just softly guide your mind so it doesn't stray too far off from the prompts that I'll be saying. And one of the most important parts for this guided meditation, the outcomes are, and this is from the Visuddhimagga, to generate a sense of urgency, as in, like, yes, we are all going to die. Like, I'm going to die, you're going to die. Everyone who's born is going to die eventually. It could be this next second, it could be in 50 years, we don't know. But we want to bring that to the forefront. And by doing that, we want to generate the sense of urgency, like I really want to do something worthwhile because I don't know when I'm going to die. It's going to happen, but I don't want to waste my time. Like, I want to cut to the chase. Like, if there's someone, this is a mundane example. Like, if there's someone I'm really attracted to, like, I want to just ask them out. Or like, if I want to further my spiritual development, like, I'm gonna stop going on my phone. I'm gonna meditate for a half hour. So that's like the sense of urgency one should develop. And in Theravada Buddhism, they would go one step further and just say the sense of urgency is you've been in samsara, which is existence, for basically infinitely in the past. The sense of urgency is you're a human now. You have the faculties to develop insight and concentration to break out of this cycle of suffering. The next thing we're trying to generate is a mindfulness, staying in the present moment. And then lastly, insight. So yes, death is a sensitive subject, and if strong emotions or feelings arise, note that that's okay. Like, let it be, but try to let it go, because that's not what the point of this meditation is about. It's not to bring about strong reaction, like strong emotional reactions. Like, for example, if you were to just think about like the death of like a pet or like a really close loved one, and you get really emotional, you get sad. That's not what this meditation is about. It's mostly about the three things that I just listed above. But if those emotions and feelings do arise, it's even possible for like a primal feeling of death or like fear of death to arise. Just accept them, just let them be. They're going to arise and they're going to disappear. And then return back to the main goals or the contemplation sentence or whatever it is for the meditation. Okay. So, with that being said, I think we can move on to the guided meditation portion. Okay, so I'm just going to describe the meditation, the 3 sub-meditations we're going to be doing really quickly. Everyone should get into a comfortable position in real life. This is a closed-eyed meditation. You can try to sit with your spine straight. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're not too comfortable. Like, if you have to lay down, that's fine. You just don't want to be too comfortable, and you don't want to be too uncomfortable. So try to find like a balance between the two. You can rest your hands however they're comfortable on your lap. And okay, so that should do it with the posture and everything. So for the 3 sub-meditations, the first one, I'm going to be reading these contemplation points, as I call them. There's 8 of them. And so I'll read each one of the 8, and then I'll give either a minute and 30 seconds or up to 2 minutes per contemplation point, depending how much I feel that there is to think about. So what I'll do is, like, I'll read contemplation point 1, then I have a timer on my phone, and I'll let it go for either a minute and 30 seconds or 2 minutes. During this time, this is where you use your creative imagination around the contemplation point. Remember, if you get lost in thought, just come back to the contemplation point, but also don't try to like strain your attention so much. It's kind of like a loose contemplation. And then for the second meditation, this one will be, I'll probably give about 3 minutes for this one. And then the last meditation is a mantra meditation, and I'll probably do about 3 minutes for that. So in total, it'll probably be like around 15 or so minutes. Okay, so if everyone's ready, we can get started. All right, so firstly, everyone take a few deep breaths. What we want to do is we want to get grounded in the present moment. We We want to let go of the past, any thoughts of the future. We want to expand our awareness. If we're sitting down, we want to feel the chair or the cushion underneath us. We want to feel the sensation of our feet on the ground. If there's any sounds, we want to be mindful of the sounds coming in. Take another deep breath. Just want to relax and get comfortable. We're entering into our sacred space of meditation. A few more deep breaths, and then we'll get started. Alright, so we'll get started with the 8 ways of recollecting death. Think of death as having the appearance of a murderer. Death comes with birth, it takes life and never gives it back. Okay, number 2. Death as the ruin of success. All health ends in sickness. All youth ends in aging. All life ends in death. Any success in life is taken away. Everything we've accumulated, our bodies, our relationships, everything is gone. Number 3, death by comparison. Every single being who's ever lived has died, even the greatest warriors, leaders, sages. The Buddha himself died. The richest politicians and celebrities died. We're all subject to death. Number 4, as to the sharing of the body with many, think about how many different creatures, bacteria, microorganisms, and diseases share your body, and how at the moment of death, that it'll become food just like that for other living creatures. Number 5, death as to the frailty of life. That we humans need air to breathe, we need the proper temperature, we need food, water, we need sleep, we need gravity, and how accidents happen so easily. You can be stung by a venomous creature and die, you can fall and die, drown, have a heart attack, a brain aneurysm. Number 6, death as signless. Death is completely unpredictable. We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know where we're going to die. We don't know how we're going to die. And from a Theravada Buddhist perspective, we don't know where we're going after death. Number 7, death as to the limitedness of the extent. As in, we can live to about 120 years old. We need to develop a sense of urgency and mindfulness, as if we had one more in-breath and out-breath left. How focused and present would you be if you only had one more breath to live? Think about and apply the sense of urgency and mindfulness to your daily life. Lastly, number 8, death as to the shortness of the moment. In the grand scheme of things, our conscious lives are so short. We sleep at night, we're lost in thought during the day. We experience these single conscious moments that never return the same way again. The past is a memory and the future is a thought. Okay, so those were the 8 ways of recollecting death, and that concludes meditation 1. So if we want to just take a few deep breaths, get grounded in the present moment again, we'll move on to meditation number 2. So for this meditation, we're going to bring to mind a subject, and we're going to apply all the 8 ways of recollecting death to the subject. We don't want to think about the death of a loved one, because that'll produce sadness. We don't want to think about our death of ourselves, because that'll produce anxiety. The death of someone we hate, because we might feel good about that. Or someone neutral, where we'll have no feeling whatsoever. So a really good subject to bring to mind is someone who's died, but they were formerly seen enjoying good things. I like to use a celebrity, or maybe a politician that I really enjoyed, or a leader that I really liked. So I'll give everyone a few moments to bring someone to mind. Okay, so once you have your subject, think about the 8 ways of recollecting death that we just contemplated, how it relates to this person, and then ultimately how it's relating to you. So contemplate this for the next few minutes. Remember, we want to bring to mind a subject who's died, who was formerly seen enjoying good things, but they're no longer with us, and how that can generate a sense of urgency within ourselves, and mindfulness as well. Okay, if we want to come back to the present, we'll get ready for meditation number 3, the last meditation. Let's take a few deep breaths, open our awareness, for this meditation. There will be 2 mantras that we can use. You can use one or both, and just repeat these for the next few minutes. The first one is simply death, 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 over and over again. The second mantra is death will take place, the life faculty will be interrupted, death will take place, the life faculty will be interrupted. And so recite these mentally for the next few minutes. Okay, if we want to come back to the present moment, that's the end of the third meditation. Let's try to get grounded. Take 1 or 2 more deep breaths. Start feeling all the sensations of touch and sound around you. You can open your eyes, you could stretch. So that concludes the Mindfulness of Death meditation. I just wanted to go over the outcomes again, since everyone now has experience with the mindfulness of death. This practice makes one constantly diligent, perception of disenchantment with all kinds of existence, no more attachment to life. One condemns evil, avoids storing, greed, increased perception of the 3 marks of existence, which is impermanence, unsatisfactoriness or suffering, and no self. And one dies non-deluded and fearless. So one of the biggest insights this meditation can give someone is the sense of penetrating through the ego, the illusion of the ego, and experiencing the insight of no self directly. So I think that has the greatest value from this meditation. But yes, thank you all for participating in this meditation. I hope it was valuable. I believe we're going to open up the floor to some Q&A discussion if anyone wants to talk about their experiences. Yeah, thank you, Tara. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everyone for going through this guided meditation with me. I hope you found something of value. I am going to post in the Discord a few different things I have in my notes. The story of the nun who gets enlightened by seeing teeth. the different types of Visuddhimagga meditation, and I'll also post the instructions for the Mindfulness of Death if anyone wants to continue this on their own. And then also where the Mindfulness of Death is in the Anguttara Nikaya and the Visuddhimagga. So thank you all. I really appreciate it. And Taro, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Equanimity, again. On behalf of everybody here, throw this man some emojis, folks. Oh, yeah. If you want to continue meditation practice and study at VRM, you can do so on Tuesdays. Actually, Equanimity alias and I are currently working on expanding the methods we will be teaching, so that's something to look out for. Also, Equanimity is hosting TMI's self-study channel on Discord. He posts a lot of very nice handwritten things there. You know, it's the number one way to stay in touch with others who are going through the Mind Illuminated, which, if you're not sure what it is, check out the library here or the Discord. You know, it's a very good meditation manual that's free on archive.org. Many people here work through it, from it, and yeah, that way you can maintain your own practice, but also have others to talk with. It's very good way to go about it.